Hello, my name is Staff Sergeant William Waldner with the 126th Chemical Battalion and the Nebraska Army National Guard Surf P. We will be going over the Henry Doorly Zoo emergency operations plans today. Before I get too far into it, emergency exits are to the left right here, out through here. We will go to the northernmost tree before we get to the road. That will be our meetup point if we exit from here. Senior ranked person in the military will be the one taking lead and gathering up and communicating to our other location, where if we go out that emergency exit, you'll take a right and then a left, go out the front door. Then we will meet up right next to the pool. Senior leadership again, senior-most leadership again, will communicate between the two back and forth, and then we will take roll call, and if anything needs to go on that. In case of an active shooter, we will barricade both doors, keep ourselves inside, be quiet. If someone enters, we will then respond with force. Next slide, please. The objectives of today. We're going to be discussing the Henry Doorly Zoo, a quick overview of why it would be targeted and what the potential hazards could be that would hit this place. We're going to do a brief overview of the entire purpose of this. We are going to talk about community needs, whole community plan. We're going to go over the risk assessment process that we're going to be using for this emergency operation plans. Then we are going to dive into the hazards and risks associated, the area to include local, county, and state level resources and capabilities. We will then be going over our references and then our conclusion to the brief. Next slide, please. The Henry Doorly Zoo is a large tourist attraction. Yearly attendance reaches up to 2 million people, and that is not 2 million individuals, such as they count one attendance as one person showing up. So if there's multiple people showing up throughout the year, they only count as one. This is 2 million separate people, so that, and these people come from nearby, other countries across the world. It has also been voted world's #1 zoo multiple years in a row. The most recent one to give them that acclaim was the USA Today poll, where the Henry Doorly Zoo swept through all three factors that determined it to be that. The other major part about it is the scientific and animal conservation that is there. There are dozens of endangered species. Several of them are considered red critical, where there is less than 1,500 of those species known to exist at this time. They also, because of the scientific and animal conservations, there are multiple different ecosystems there. Henry Doorly Zoo has created continents, is the best way to describe it. There is an Asia, there's an Africa, there's a European, and they have all the different climates and weather and environments throughout the world to support these animals. Next slide, please. Purpose of this brief is to provide a formal presentation of the Henry Doorly Zoo operational plan to community and state level management and stakeholders. This plan is to create guidelines within the Henry Doorly Zoo surrounding areas, starting within a 3 to 4 block perimeter and branching out into the Omaha area and potentially even the Douglas County area. We are also going to be going over the assigning roles for different agencies and shareholders. And then we are going to discuss the recovery and placement of animals and affected individuals after the incident. Next slide, please. Community needs. First and foremost, we must meet the needs of the victims. We are to save human lives. First and foremost, mitigate injuries, whether serious or minor. So that could be triage and or long-term medical care. Animal preservation and relocation, as I said, this is a large research, both scientifically and conservation point. We will also be evacuating surrounding residential housing, because there is a large residential area surrounding it. The care, and then we will also look at the care for humans, animals, and those evacuated. We will be protecting property, infrastructure stabilization, create security for site, so we will create a perimeter so that way no one can go in or out, only funneled through our location, and prevent contamination. Again, talking about all the different ecosystems and environments there. Contamination can happen, especially with the equipment that they use to maintain those ecosystems. Then most importantly, restoring the community and the Henry Dorley Zoo to where it was. We need to first reestablish the zoo and surrounding areas infrastructures through their facilities. Logistical routes need to be secured, so like I said, with the security being pulled, but also with the recovery of it, we would have to rebuild areas that could have been damaged or unused or not maintained during the incident. And then encourage economic resurgence. Next slide. Whole community planning. Shared responsibility is the involvement of everyone in these preparedness efforts. By working together, we can keep the Henry Dorley Zoo safe and resilient when incidents happen. These incidents can include natural disasters, targeted attacks, terroristic attacks, accidents, and even pandemics. The whole community includes the Henry Dorley Zoo, but then pushing it further out, there's Omaha, Nebraska, Douglas County, the local population to spread throughout that, tourists that are coming through, because like I said, there are 2 million individuals who come to the Henry Dorley Zoo yearly, local businesses, faith-based organizations, community organizations, shelters, hospitals, and media outlets to include traditional and social media. The risk assessment process. We are going to use a THERA process, which is a threat and hazard identification and risk assessment process, and AARs during this process. Down here, I have the THERA. Step 1, identify the threats. 2, give the threats and hazards context. 3, establish capability targets. And 4, apply the results. I will also be using AARs for when we do sandbox drills and or real life scenario drills. That way, even if there's a mistake during training, we can address it, come back to it, and hopefully we do not have that same incident happening during a real life scenario. We also need to understand potential hazards. There are numerous potential hazards, whether it is a targeted attack, mechanical malfunction, or just like what happened with COVID, a pandemic, which could cause a severe issue within there. And then develop timelines for the response. Next slide, please. Hazards and risks associated. Mechanical failures. That includes equipment malfunction and accidental equipment failures, and also intentional equipment failures. If there's a disgruntled employee, could cause damage to it. There was an incident at another zoo where certain chemicals were introduced into an aquarium that did cause damage to the animals and conservationism. The next thing, natural disasters, tornadoes, which happens. We just had one recently, and luckily there was minimal damage to the Henry Dorley Zoo. Some trees were knocked down, nothing serious. Floods. We have rivers going right through there, and that is a major thing. Can cause contamination with the aquarium and destruction of the environmental or conservation areas inside of the zoo. And then the last one, winter weather emergencies. Omaha, and especially the Midwest in Nebraska, has a reputation for extreme weather during winters, whether it's whiteout blizzards, up to -50 wind chill, and ice that can cause cracking and damage to the infrastructure. And then the last one is targeted / terroristic attacks. This one would be more of a pointed attack, bombs, biological, chemical, radiological, anything along those lines that can be used to instill fear or damage by a disgruntled organization or person. Next slide, please. Resources and capabilities. The first thing that we would have is police and security. Starting at local level, you have the Henry Dorley Zoo. They have their own security, but it can, during an incident, can be supplemented with the Omaha Police Department, Douglas County Sheriff's Department, and then if it pushes up to statewide, we can reach out to the Nebraska Army National Guard, and General Craig Strong can activate the National Guard, bringing in the cavalry, infantry, and the MP units to create a barrier surrounding. Response. This would, again, Omaha Fire and Rescue and the Douglas County Fire and Rescue, to include ambulances and hospitals. But we also in Nebraska have the 72nd Civil Support Team, again, once it's initiated by General Craig Strong. And then the Nebraska Army National Guard has a SURF-P, which is a long-term decontamination and chemical response team. Recovery, going back to the hospitals, we will use local hospitals until full, then flood over will transfer over to the Lincoln hospitals. We will try to stay outside of small town hospitals between. We will avoid using those because it could easily fill up too fast. Lincoln has a capability of housing within the multiple different hospitals out there. Shelters, we will lean on schools, religious and community-based organizations there too. And then if all of that fills up too quickly, then we can rely on the local armories, such as the North Omaha Readiness Center and the South Omaha Readiness Center. Next slide. This is a list of all my references where I pulled all my information. Next slide. Conclusion. We went over the community needs, discussed our whole community plan. We did a risk assessment, hazards and risks associated, resources and capabilities, references, and conclusions. If there are no questions about this, I will lead us into the sandbox drill that we have set up outside.